Hey guys, hope you're all doing great. I'm Ethan, and today we're diving into another set of wild Reddit stories. If you enjoy these deep dives, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you won't miss the next one. All right, fellas, let's jump right in. First story coming up. Much love, boys.
I didn't learn the truth from a fight, or a lipstick stain, or some dramatic text that lit up at 2 in the morning. I learned it from a number. One number on a line I typed myself. $60,000, vendor, consulting partner, paid by ACH on a Thursday when she swore she had lunch with a client at South Station. I stepped away from the screen and watched snow slide down the window of our apartment in the South End. All the noise in the street felt like it was happening inside my head. If you ask me when it started, I'll say it started when she asked for something small. A tiny bet on myself, she said, a studio with light and a door that had only her name on it. I said yes because I meant it. I'm a Boston numbers guy, 45, quick with a ledger and slow with emotion, but I married an idea. Melissa was the kind of woman who turned a Craigslist dresser into a boutique piece with nothing but paint and a podcast for company. Of course I wanted to see what she'd do with a cracked brick room in Jamaica Plain and a stack of swatch books. We drew up an LLC on our couch. I handled the boring parts: EIN, vendor files, bookkeeping software, a basic budget. Rent would be $2,800 a month. Insurance, catalog subscriptions, a little for marketing. We'd float 3 months of runway from our savings and then tighten or cut. It was clean math. She would bring in clients from word of mouth, and my job was to keep lights on and notices off our door. For a while, it worked. That first spring, I watched her carry rugs the length of the block, smiling with her whole face. She posted photos of sample boards taped to the brick wall, moody blues, warm creams, brass against matte black. We ate dinner standing at the island, charting the next month. One client, then two, then a lull the week of Patriots Day when everyone seemed to flee the city. She talked about momentum and brand, and I talked about cash flow and liabilities, and we met in the middle over pasta. Then came the quiet drips. Nothing bad, just drips. A coffee table bought from a custom shop in Somerville that wasn't in the budget, a new iPad Pro because presentations matter, a subscription to a design tool that billed annually and made my stomach jerk when I saw the amount. I asked easy questions in easy ways. Do we need both the tool and the mock-up service? I asked one Monday while the green line rattled by our window like a metallic heartbeat. They're different, she said, not looking up. One is for schematics and the other is for mood boards. You can't present to a Beacon Hill client with pixelated boards. Are we doing Beacon Hill now? She smiled, the smile that made me forget to guard myself. Soon! I wanted to believe her because belief felt better than doubt. But numbers do not care what feels better. I saw revenue trickle and expenses pace like a runner in a cul-de-sac. By July, the line between the two looked wrong. We should have been close to even. We weren't. I told myself small businesses breathe unevenly. You starve, then you feast, then you starve. That's what people say. But in September, I watched another ACH leave, this one labeled short-term vendor support, and my throat tightened. It was too smooth an entry to be a scam. I had created the authorization rules. It passed because I had clicked some box in April that said, yes, vendors may be paid from this account. Here are the limits. Here is the memo field. Every bookkeeper has a moment he dreads, the moment the money says something the person has not said. Mine came the day a letter from the Department of Revenue arrived on a gray Saturday. A routine desk audit, it said. Provide invoices and proof of services for listed expenses. It wasn't a big deal. I've done 100. It just meant time. I made coffee. I spread statements and receipts like cards across our table. I held the ones that jumped. Vendor, consulting partner, amount, 60,000, memo, build out in systems, attached invoice, vague. I called her. Hey, where are you? I tried to keep my voice level. I didn't want this to be anything. Brunch with Tessa at Flower, she said. Why? Do you have the contract for the consulting partner? The 60. It's in the studio, file box A. Do you need it right now? Soon, I paused, as if the pause could learn something. What's his name? What? The consultant. Name for the DOR form. I'll text it, she said. It's a guy from school. He's helping with back-end processes. He's cheaper than an agency. Back-end processes, I repeated. Don't get like that, Nick. It's business. On paper, that sentence is nothing. In my chest, it was a hand pushing me back. Don't get like that, as if the worry was a personality flaw and not a line of ink leaving our account. I didn't fight. I hung up and finished my coffee, which had gone cold. That night, while she showered, her phone lit up on the counter with a notification from Instagram. I don't go through phones. I hate the person you have to become to justify that. But it wasn't a message. It was a push. You were tagged in a post. The thumbnail showed a table for two and the edge of her laugh. I tapped because I am human. A young man, late 20s, maybe 30, sat with his elbow on the table in a place I knew by the tiles on the floor. It was a new spot in the seaport with fake ivy on a trellis and a line out the door most nights. The caption was a string of hearts and a champagne bottle. The tag, Melissa Leans. The comments, great duo, power team. She wrote back with clapping hands. Another post showed him standing in front of her studio wall, pointing at swatches. The tag called him architect. I stared at the ceiling until the water shut off. When she came out, towel knotted at the top, steam following like a ghost, I tried to make a normal sound. Who's he? She reached for her moisturizer the way she always does, like the order of these creams was a safety rail. Who? The one you had dinner with. Clients become friends, Nick, she said, breezy. That's how you grow. He's a client? A partner, she said. Junior. He'll help me scale. Is his name the same as the consultant on the $60,000 invoice? She froze. You can pretend in words, but your hands will tell on you. Don't make this a thing, she said. I'm trying to build something. I set the phone down. So am I. We didn't fight that night. Fighting would have been simpler. We went to sleep at opposite edges and woke to a place that did not feel like ours. Monday, I did the audit, the way you were supposed to do an audit. I made a file. I matched invoices to bank transfers. I requested contracts and SOWs and deliverables. The more I searched, the more I found smoke. The contract for the consultant used generic templates. The remit address was a P.O. box in Cambridge. The EIN printed on the invoice didn't match the one filed with the Secretary of State. You could call it sloppy. You could call it a mistake. You could also call it a way to move money without questions from people like me. I did something I had never done in 15 years of reconciling other people's messes. I checked Venmo. She had asked me once what the point of the thing was if we both had access to the business account. I'd said it was for tips to interns or quick reimbursements. That's how we set it up. And there it was now, the public side of a private life, pizza slice emojis, a silver bell, a thanks for the ride, a joke about late nights at the studio, all tagged between her and him. Small amounts, but frequency tells a story math will always hear. Twice a week, then 4 times, then a lull matched perfectly with the weekend we'd gone to her parents in Connecticut. You could plot their closeness on a calendar and see it light up. I opened an email from a client named Nora who lived in a row house in Charlestown with stairs so steep I could feel them in my knees. Love what you've done, she wrote, but the junior architect, missed the walkthrough and we waited an hour. Melissa said he had an emergency. Can we reschedule? I scrolled. The emergency was a photo of him and Melissa against a railing at the harbor walk, the skyline soft and blue behind them, posted at the exact hour Nora waited. I walked to the window and watched the afternoon press itself against the glass. The south end felt colder than it was. A dog barked somewhere and the sound was too bright. I needed the world to slow. I needed a rule, a number, a law. Accounting is a religion for people who can't pray. It says you can always trace a thing back to source. It says everything balances in the end. Hey, I called into the studio on Tuesday, laptop under my arm. I had stopped by unannounced, the way you do when your life needs to prove itself true. She looked up from her drafting table, hair twisted on top of her head with a pencil pinned through like an exclamation point. The place smelled like paint and eucalyptus cleaner. Light fell across the boards in long strips. She looked like the woman I had said yes to in a courthouse 15 years ago. It made it worse. Can we talk? I asked. Sure. Late lunch? Or now. She glanced at the back room. Evan's in the sample closet, she said too fast, and I found the shape of the word like a bruise. Evan, not an E, not a consultant, a person with a body and a laugh and a tagged face. I kept my voice even. We're being audited on expenses. I need the deliverables tied to the 60, scopes, drafts, anything. You the accountant, Nick, she said. Make the audit go away. That's not how audits go. She turned, and there was a flicker of something across her face. Fear, annoyance, I couldn't say. I'm in the middle of a mock-up. The closet door opened, and he stepped out with a stack of tile samples balanced like a cake. He was younger, in the way that makes you feel older by comparison, like time is a room he hasn't learned is small yet. He wore a sweater that tried too hard and a smile that didn't bother. "This is Nick," she said like she was introducing a client, "not her husband. He handles operations." Operations? I nodded, because if I didn't nod, I would shake. "Big fan," he said, sticking out his hand. "She's a genius." "Then pay her," I said, before I could stop myself. The air got tight. He set the tile down. "We have a lot going on," he said. "Not to me, to her," wine-smooth voice, a little too loud, as if noise could mask the math. I looked at her. "We'll talk tonight." "Working late?" she said. "Of course you are," I said. The first fight came 2 nights later. It wasn't loud, but it left marks. "Are you sleeping with him?" I asked, plain as a ledger line. It was the only question left. She pinched the bridge of her nose as if my words gave her a headache. "Don't be cruel." "Cruel? There's 60 grand missing under his name." "Not missing. Invested." Her voice tilted on that last word like it had been rehearsed. "Into what?" "Into someone who believes in me." "That's not a business plan. It's what you won't give me." "I gave you a company," I said. I kept my voice low because volume is cheap and numbers aren't. "I gave you rent and insurance and a brand. I gave you hot meals and a quiet apartment and a person who shows up. If I didn't give you what he gives you, then say what that is." She looked past me at nothing. "You don't see me." "I see the lines in the budget." "Exactly," she said, and laughed, a brittle sound that scraped. "You see numbers and not me." "I see numbers because numbers don't lie." She turned away. "I don't want to do this." "You already did it," I said. The next escalation didn't come from a screen. It came from the landlord. The studio's building was old brick with a new owner who wore suits you could hear when he walked. He called me on a Wednesday at 9. "Mr. Houlihan," he said, and I hated the way my last name sounded like a file cabinet. "Your lease rolls in 60 days. We can renew at a 10% increase." I swallowed. "We'll pass on the increase." "Then we'll pass on you," he said. "I have 2 tenants lined up who want activated street frontage, whatever that is." "Give us 30, I said. "We'll decide." He sighed, the way men sigh when they believe they're patient and you're wasting it. "I need a commitment by Friday." I hung up and stared at the spreadsheet where the cells were little white rooms with doors I couldn't open. We couldn't afford an increase. We could barely afford the present. I walked to the studio and found the front door locked at 3 in the afternoon. A sign on the glass read, "Closed for private consultation." Through the blinds, I saw silhouettes and laughter. I stood there a long minute, considering what kind of man I wanted to be. There's a version of this story where I bang on the door and drag everything into daylight. There's another where I go home and make stew and wait. I texted her. "Landlord wants a decision. Call me." No answer, no answer. I went back that night when I knew they'd be there because of patterns I couldn't unknow now. I listened as she said, "I want everything in brass like we talked about." And he said, "I want whatever you want. It's funny the small ways." She never asked me what I wanted. I think I forgot I was supposed to. I could have confronted her then. Instead, I did the only thing I trust. I built a report. I pulled every bank statement, every Venmo transfer, every invoice with his name, every email that mentioned junior architect, every calendar entry that said networking when my savings account said hemorrhage. It was neat. It was a thing you could hold in your hands and know what to call it. 48 pages, tabbed. On the front, I printed a cover with the studio name because I am a small, tidy man in a life that has gotten too messy. I left the stack on the studio desk early on a Thursday and texted, "At your office at 8, please come in." She replied with a thumbs up, as if this were a delivery confirmation and not my heart. He wasn't there when she walked in. She was alone, coat open, hair wild from wind, eyes already defensive. "What is this?" she asked, flipping. "Receipts," I said. "The language you speak when you don't want to say what you've done." "Is there a world where you don't humiliate me?" she said. "Nobody's here." "I'm here," she said, small. She flipped to the bank transfer. 60, she said. Like, if she said it, it would shrink. It wasn't all at once. 3 payments of 20, I said. "Consulting partner." "He helped me," she said. "He was there when I was scared." "He was there because you paid him to be there." I made myself stay calm. I had to. "The invoice EIN is wrong. The address is a box. There's no W-9 in our files. He's not a vendor. He's a story." She folded her arms as if that could hold her together. "People need people. Businesses need profit." "Listen," she said, and the word shivered, a single plank over a drop. "I lost myself. I felt like nothing. I wanted someone to say I was." She swallowed and shook her head. I didn't mean to hurt you. You didn't lose yourself, Melissa. I didn't raise my voice. I put my hand on the stack the way you steady a thing in an earthquake. You sold. A soft sound came out of her, half laugh, half sob, as if someone had stepped on a floorboard that gave. You don't get to decide my story. No, I said, but I get to decide if I fund it. The door opened then, and he came in with that thoughtless timing people have when life has always made room for them. He saw the stack and saw me and did a smile like a shield. Hey, he said to her, forgot my sketchbook. Out, I said, turning to him, and I surprised us both with how sharp it came. Business meeting. He glanced at Melissa, and she didn't back him. He left, the door clicking like a period. I slid a letter across the desk. I'm closing the company, I said. Today, I filed the dissolution papers. I've canceled vendor authorizations. Payroll is settled. You'll need to vacate by end of month. The lease won't be renewed. You can't, she said, but the way she said it told me she knew I could. I can, I said. I did. She sat down like her knees forgot what their job was. I loved you, she said, and I knew the tense wasn't an accident. I believe you, I said, and I did. I think that's the worst part. Love can live inside a lie for a very long time. You're cruel, she whispered. No, I said, I'm precise. That should have been the end. It wasn't, because endings are messy and grief has to do its laps. I cleaned the books the way you wash a body before a funeral. I wrote checks to vendors who had earned them and canceled ones who hadn't. I called our one part-time intern, a kid from Dorchester, who used to light up when Melissa let him pick tile. I told him I'd write him a letter for school. He cried. I didn't. Not then. I signed the paperwork at the Secretary of State's office for articles of dissolution and watched a clerk stamp the end of a thing we'd started with such neat hope. I moved out on a Sunday when the city smelled like bagels and wet stone. I took 2 suitcases and a box of files and drove north on 93 until Boston felt like a toy in the rear view. I rented a small apartment in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, because I needed water in a town that didn't have my story in its brick. I hung a coat on the hook by the door and cried for the first time, hard and ugly, bent over like it was coming out of my ribs and not my eyes. Then I slept, and when I woke, I bought coffee at a place where the barista didn't know me and smiled like humans do when they pass other humans in the morning and nothing is broken between them. People always ask about revenge without using the word. Did I tell her family? Did I tell potential clients? Did I leave a review somewhere that would ruin her? I didn't. The lawyer I paid $200 an hour to say basic truths told me to keep my mouth shut and my paperwork clean, so I did. Silence is a punishment when you've been funded by attention. She called twice that first month. I didn't answer. She texted once. I'm sorry. I saved it. Not for her, for me. Proof that it happened, that I wasn't inventing a hurt for the drama of it. I hired a therapist because men in their 40s think they can outrun blowback until their body says no. I sat on a couch in a room with good light and a plant that had been watered on time and said, she took my money, and then said, she took my story, and then said, she took my story, and then said nothing at all for a while. I started a small practice again, just for me. Books for 3 restaurants and a landscaping company whose owner hugged me when I found a payroll error that put cash back in his account before Christmas. Numbers are not love, but they can be kindness. I set my hours and walked the harbor in the mornings and watched tourists take photos of the same water that had held every ship like it was new. I felt, for the first time in a long time, like a person I could live with. Spring came fast up there, the kind of spring that makes you forgive winter because of how green shows up like a promise kept. I ran into a woman at a hardware store while I was buying picture hooks. She was choosing a drill and looked like she could make a house from sticks and willpower. We talked about torque. We laughed. I didn't ask her name. That felt like kindness too, to her, to me. Almost a year to the day after I laid the stack on that studio table, an envelope arrived. It was thin. My name written in a careful hand I knew from holiday cards and grocery lists and apologies. It had a Boston postmark and a corner bent like it had been carried in a jacket pocket, then a purse, then a mailbox. The return address was a UPS store near Back Bay. I didn't open it. I put it in the top drawer of my desk between a stapler and a pack of sticky notes, and I let it sit there like an artifact. You can decide that made me noble. It didn't. It just meant the math was done. The money I lost had already been paid in a way with the part of me that believed the story we wrote together. You can cash a check and it won't give you that back. I kept the envelope as a record of a universe in which she wanted to do the right thing, even if the currency was late. I still think about the words I said in that studio. You didn't lose yourself, you sold. They sound harsh now, except when I say them out loud, I don't hear me talking to her as much as me talking to me, because somewhere along the line, I sold parts too. I sold the part of me that asked how she was doing instead of whether the books balanced. I sold quiet time to fear. I sold grace to control. I didn't invent her choices, but I built the room they echoed in. I'm not carrying her blame, I'm just not pretending I lived with a stranger. On good days, Boston is just a skyline on a sweatshirt I never wear anymore. On bad days, I can smell her shampoo on a clean pillow and want to throw it out the window. But the balance sheet is different now. There are more good days. I cook for one, and the food tastes like a person paying attention. I call my sister on Sundays and talk about nothing that matters and everything that does. I do the stupid little thing my therapist told me to do, where you list 3 things you can see, and 2 you can hear, and 1 you can feel when your chest gets tight. I have become, unfortunately, a person who can feel his own feet on a floor and call it progress. If you're waiting for the twist where she comes back and begs, or where he leaves her and she calls me from a dark street in the rain, I can't give you that. Sometimes the twist is that nothing dramatic happens and you stand up anyway. Sometimes the twist is a man at a kitchen island placing an envelope in a drawer and choosing never to open it because the only number that matters now is 0, the number of times you go back to see if you can find a way to balance a thing that never wanted to be balanced. There's a phrase in my trade I always liked, true and fair, as in true and fair view of the financial position. When people think accountants, they think rules, but that phrase is about story. What's the truth that's fair to tell? The truth here is simple. We started a little room with big light and money left that should have stayed, and love turned its face, and I chose myself, late but sure. It's not a fairy tale, it's an audit. It's the feeling of a stamp on paper and a signature that shakes just a little because a hand knows what a heart is doing. The truth here is simple. If you've ever loved a person who spit your money and your faith on someone else, you know this already. Accounting doesn't lie, but it doesn't hug you either. The hug comes from the people who watched you break and told you you weren't less for breaking. The hug comes from a quiet town where nobody knows your name yet and a cup of coffee you made for yourself and didn't apologize for drinking hot. The hug comes, surprisingly, from inside your own chest when you realize you're not lost. You just knew. A year and a half after the letter, I finally opened the top drawer to get a paperclip and looked at the envelope. It had yellowed around the edges. I held it between 2 fingers. I didn't open it. I put it back. Not because I'm better than the man who wants the money, because I am different from the man who needed the proof. I already know what's inside. A check, maybe. A note. A sentence about wanting to make things right. I wish her well. I mean that. But wishes are not entries. I keep my books clean now. True. Fair sir, not entries. I keep my books clean now. Do you think you could leave an envelope like that unopened? When money is mixed with a betrayal, what would help you heal faster, getting paid back or never speaking again? If this hit a nerve, tell me why in the comments and subscribe for more stories like this.